I uploaded a new one that you can download. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think we'll get started. So today's class, we're just going to continue with our final class on Angular. Just trying to slowly transform our games app into to use Angular. So last week we left off of displaying the games through. I asked you to create a table to try to display the games. For today's class, I do have a new GitHub package for you to download in case you didn't do that or whatnot, so that we're all starting fresh again. Basically, the agenda for today is as follows. So number one, we're going to talk about the presentation that starts next week. Number two, we're going to do Angular stuff. And number three, a work period for those of you who have questions, debugging questions, whatever questions, I'll be around. Okay. So in terms of the Angular stuff, we're going to try to fulfill these functions: the fill data, the delete, the add, the edit, maybe the play, as well as a couple of other tools. So here are the new packages on GitHub that I'd like for you to download so we can all start on the same plate. And I learned my lesson from last week. So I'm going to give you the time-intensive one first, and then we can talk about the presentation, which will nicely, I think. So here are the two links for the front and back. Put them in the same folder. Download that. Do the npm install for the node one, and you'll be good to go. So topic number one, presentation rubric. So I haven't really formally talked about the presentation. Before I open up our assignment for the presentation and the rubric, I'm actually currently thinking this. How would you feel in terms of assessment that your presentation grade is wholly dependent upon your peers that are watching in class? So 100% of your grade are coming from your friends rather than me grading your presentation. It's coming from your peers and me, but
I have no peers.
Yeah. So basically, whoever's in class are grading you. That's the point. How would you feel about that? Nikita, what do you think? Don't know. Any feelings? Half split. Okay, so let's talk. Okay, so let's split it up. What's the split percentage? 50-50, 70-30, what? 80-20?
Well, if the students have 100% of the say, then hey, we all got the unspoken rule.
I suppose. Unless someone hates you. So what do you think the split percentage would be? So 50% me, 50% class. Is that fair? 70-30. So who's the 70? Me? Okay. I got it. All right. Cool. Shall remember that. Thank you. Let me write that down somewhere. Let me say, I'll put it in the pre-class to-dos here. Because I already had a sentence here. Think about what percentage. So your grade will be based on 70% my assessment 30% class. Oh. Great. Yes. Speaking of announcements, I did put an announcement here. So again, reminder, your assignment is due tomorrow. But show of hands, who here has heard of Lynda? Lynda.com. So everyone, okay. So as you know, if you graduate, you probably won't get access anymore to Lynda. But I found out that our public libraries, like Barrie Public Library, Toronto Public Library, whatever Ontario Public Library you happen to be at, they should have it. Okay. I've also updated the list of presenters. Basically, I've put last any YouTubers only. So I've made accommodations for those who can't be here for whatever reason, and I put the YouTubers last just in case, you know, if we go over time, at least I can ask you to review the YouTubes at home and grade, you know, grade or whatever kind of thing. Okay. So let's look at the presentation rubric. Let's open that up. Let's talk about it. I was hearing questions earlier before class about, you know, what exactly, how exactly to present. So let's just talk about that. Basically, put yourself in the teacher role, and you are teaching for 20 minutes. That's it. I'm giving you the freedom for your own teaching style. I'm giving you the freedom to teach whatever you want, whether it's big picture, little picture. I'm giving you the freedom to try out a class exercise, lead the class into some kind of coding exercise, perhaps. It really depends on your topic, I suppose, but that's basically what I'm looking for. Okay. A GitHub link to all your files would be good. And also, if you're in a group with multiple people, submit about how each member contributed to the project, time spent, and that kind of thing. You already have your you already have your topic to present at this point in time. And I would also urge you to consider, as you are presenting live in class, consider what I do, which is present live on YouTube as well, only because you could use that as part of your portfolio to demonstrate to future employers, hey, this is I can communicate well, I can learn on my own, independent research kind of thing. So, you know, something to consider. You'll be marked with the following criteria. So class engagement, quality of research, presentation of material, and demo application. So this demo application, it could be you just showing us you coding, or it could be you leading us into coding. Whatever works for you best for whatever topic you are. Yeah. Considering that you only have 20 minutes, you know, you can't really lead the class into something in depth, but it would be nice to lead us into at least how to start it off, perhaps, if that suits your topic. If not, you could just, you know, go through your code, I suppose. Question, Luke.
During our 20-minute break, a 20-minute lunch.
No, so the way breaks will work, as I mentioned last time, is each of the presentation groups will present one after another to minimize the amount of wasted time. And how breaks will work is if you need to go, just go. Maybe out of courtesy, probably time your exit and your entrance when the next group transitions here. Okay. So here's the rubric. You know, how much research you do into it. Presentation material, class engagement, are the students, you know, engaged, and some kind of demo application. Okay. Any questions on that? Basically, you are the teacher. You're up here. You are the teacher. You teach how you want to teach. Okay. All right. A couple of tools I'm going to mention that hopefully I'll remember using today is this one here. Who here, show of hands, who's here heard of Postman? You've heard of Postman, all of you? Great. So what that is it's a Chrome extension where you can actually test out your JSON APIs. So let's say your localhost 3000/games spits out all the games in JSON format. What you could do is test that out here, so you don't have to always, you know, usually console log in our application to see what's coming out. You could do it here. So you could actually put in a URL, say get, and it'll spit out the JSON that's returned. In addition to get, you can also do post, which is really nice because that means you don't have to actually create the form to test out your API. For post, you could just do it here, and it'll say, oh, yeah, your API for post works. Similarly, and I think I talked about this earlier, this extension on VS Code called REST Client, where you create a file with a .http extension, and you put in your URL, and you can do the same thing. Okay, so let's start. When I did this yesterday, word of just to be honest, to be transparent, I did this yesterday. All of these functions I did yesterday, and that's why I'm kind of tired right now. But this is how much I got through. I figured fill data was the easiest one, so let's start with the easiest one, right? And the only reason why I did fill data is because when it comes to delete all the records, I need something quick to fill data, so I don't have to go into MLab for the sample data. Okay, so so the first thing, well, show of hands, who's already downloaded the GitHub stuff and is ready to go? Great. Okay, so let's open it up. So I have opened that up. I'm already in my backend on the left-hand side. I'm going to start nodebond there. Then don't forget to transfer your variables.env file for your node side. And then on the Angular side, I'm going to say ng serve-o. And let's see what happens. Let me just talk about what I did. I did a slight change from last class. If you were one of those who actually tried to implement your table on your own, I did a slight change. I moved the variable called games. You probably had a variable called games within your own component of games component, your games.component.ts. You probably had a variable called games. I moved it to this file here, web.service.ts, so that this will now be accessible through all components. That's one big change I did. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so you should get this, and this is what we already had last week. And then last week I asked you to try to create the same data through a table format. So if you click on admin, you should have something like this. So none of these buttons work yet, except for the nav links. They shouldn't necessarily go to where they need to go. So fill data, that is currently not working. Let's just take a look at the HTML side of this fill data. So that is under HTML. And where's the fill data? There it is. Let me magnify it so it's bigger on the screen for you. All right, so the first thing I did was I used the Angular event handler called click, so that when they click the button called fill data, it will automatically run this function called fill data. So question, where is that function being written? What file? Well, we're in admin.component.html, so where should this be defined? In admin.component.ts, right? So because again, these components, they're all together, right? You have the admin component, which has the HTML file, and the JavaScript file, which is the TS file, and so on. So let's create that. Hold on, let me get one thing on my other monitor. 68, week 12, oops, week 12. Hey, question.
When I try to run yeah.
For the front? For the front? Oh, you know what? See, I'm working on my own. Okay, maybe I should actually do the GitHub stuff. What's happening with your stuff? We'll close that down. Let's colon cd user cd cd node. All right, so let's create a new directory. Make directory today is lesson 13, I forget. We're going to git clone. Equal front. Then do the same thing for back. We got those two. Let's go into the back one. Npm install. While that's going on, let's open up a folder to what I just created. Let's see what you're experiencing. Done? Yes, it's done. I don't need that. Okay, so let's go into the back. I rename you. I don't like those names. Move that name to backend. That name to front end. Better. That's better. All right, so let's go to the backend. Let's npm install that. Put my terminal up. So we got two. Let's go into the front end. Let's do the ng serve o. On the back end, let's do nodemon. Let's see how that. Oh, I got the red stuff you were talking about. Okay. Could not find module Angular dev kit build Angular. What the heck is that? Okay. Okay. That's not good. What was I working off? What did I upload? Shoot. What I'm going to upload is the one I was just on. How did I upload it correctly? Okay, cd node. So I was working off lesson 11C, which was last time, and that works for me. So what I'll do, okay, this is what I'll do. I zip that up real quick and put it into Blackboard. Maybe I'll just do the same thing with GitHub. All right, let's try GitHub. Sorry, let's try it again. So I'll call this new repository. I'll call this back. Okay. And right, remove whatever Git I had before. Oh, right, you're right, yes. Now let's do a git init. Right, okay, so now we just copy this guy. Oops. Copy, paste, enter. That should be in the back. There. So now on my GitHub, you should see a new repository called back. Download that. I'll do the same thing for the front. Move whatever add. Yes, git init. AC, first commit. There we go. Let's create a new repository. Front. Create it. Copy the last two lines. Prompt. And it should magically be okay. Okay, so try that. I've just uploaded two new repositories, one called front, one called back. Hopefully, folder. So I was doing that all from lesson 11C. So let me open up my lesson 11C again. All right. Let's try it again. the backend, let's load them on that. The front end, let's ng serve that. And hopefully you don't get any errors, because it's exactly what I'm working on now. Go, close that, close that. Should get games, yes. Should admin, yes. Perfect. Don't forget your transferring your variables.env. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to fill data. Actually, I should show of hands who's ready to rock, ready to roll, or show of hands who's still waiting. Yeah. Okay. Maybe yeah. Is still doing the same thing? Now that's weird. Okay, maybe. Okay, let me zip it. How to get this? All right. Lesson 11C. Take these two files, right click. What was that? Okay, let's try this. Compress this whole thing into one file. I'll put it on Blackboard. Let's see how big this file is. I'm hoping Blackboard will take it. You figured it out? You figured it out? In the front end and npm. Oh, of course. Yeah. What was I thinking? Oh, yeah. So go to your front end, do an npmi, because it obviously needs a node modules folder. Yes. Thank you. Whew. Okay. Right, because every time I upload to GitHub on the front end, the .git what's that called? The file, the hidden file that tells GitHub what not to upload is saying don't upload the node modules folder, right? Okay, good. All right, to continue, let us do the fill data. So is everyone good now? You've done npmi on both front and back, ready to rock? Okay. So the fill data, what is the purpose of fill data? Basically, we've defined it before. In our node, in our backend, if we look at our controllers, our games controllers, let's look at our fill there. So it just fills some sample data, okay? But we want to adjust this using, or because we're using Angular, we want to adjust this. So just like last week, where we adjusted the games to output JSON, all we're going to do is adjust it to output JSON as well. Right, where's the fill data? Minimize this for a second. So as you recall, in the node side, when we were doing the Node Express app alone, we were redirecting back to the admin page after we inserted all of these sample games. Because we're using Angular, we want to adjust this. So how do you think we're going to adjust this to spit out just JSON? So I guess the question is, what do you want this to spit out? You know it's going to be JSON, but exactly what JSON and how? That's the question. And now you have to ask yourself, okay, well, on the front end, after the user clicks on the fill data button, what do they see next? They see the admin page that they were just on, except refreshed with three new games, right? So that means on the front end, which is Angular, it has to receive those 3 new games in JSON format, which means on this end, we have to insert it, which is here, and then spit out some kind of acknowledgement that say, hey, yes, it's successful, or no, it's not successful. Okay. So let's change this up. So we want this to happen, yes, but let's do some error handling as well. So just like we had this kind of thing in our other functions where we check for error, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do error all games, and I'm going to delete this line of res direct because we don't want anything to deal with the views anymore. So here we'll just do the standard error check that we've done before. Let's set up the structure. If error, else, whatever. So here, this is where the JSON comes in. So what do you want to happen if there was an error? What kind of JSON do you want back so that Angular could then handle it later? Let's suppose we want to send some kind of message saying it was not successful. So perhaps you would say something like this: res.json. And inside those brackets, you are defining what the JSON data will be. So let's output this JSON object, and let's say success will be false. So that's one key value parameter. And maybe the next one could be, the message failed to fill games, something like that. Okay. So again, let's say the network is down. Angular will try to fill data. There's an error because the network is down. Then this will happen. This res.json will happen. It'll spit out this JSON back to Angular, which Angular will catch, which we still have to code, but it'll catch it, and we can do something with that. If it's successful, we'll spit out JSON again. And you'll notice there's a common pattern. On the node side, when we're adjusting everything, all these methods in this controller, all we're doing is just outputting JSON. And then going back to Angular and receiving it. So if it is successful, what do you want to happen? Now, this is up to you. As a designer, this is up to you. And there are books out there that talk about how to develop a good REST API. I'm going to just spit out all the games. Okay. Just to keep it simple. But as I'm typing that, I'm saying to myself, that's probably a bad design. Why? Because I've already set the structure here. So I should say something like this. Keep the same structure. I'll say success is true. Message is fill games successful, and then pass in the games. Okay. All games. Like that. Something like that. But because I already worked it up with yesterday, I'll just keep it simple. And I'll just pass in all the games. Now, as I did this yesterday, I realized I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to return all the games, but it's better if I did. Why? Because it's an acknowledgement from the server side saying, yes, it's successful. Whereas if I didn't do this, if I kind of tricked the user by going into the Angular code and adding the game, even if the network is down, it would give a false display, which you don't want. Okay. So we've modified that. Okay. The next one. Okay, we've done that, number one. Number two, we're going to go into our web service.ts. This is in our front end and our web service TS, which is found here. So again, keep in mind this web service TS, think of this as the module that's responsible for getting, for fetching, for posting, get.get.post. That's why we have this. So all of our components up here, like add, admin, whatever, they will use our get and post that's defined here. Okay, so all of these components are going to call something like get games or whatever, which will do the fetching of our JSON data for us. So let's go ahead and define a new method called fill data, which will look very much or very similar to what we had before up here. We have to match this path to what we already had back in Node Express. So what was the path to fill data back in the Node side? Let's check. Go to our backend, go to our, was it roots? Roots index.js. Here, so it's just /fill data. Okay, so let's match that back here. So it's /fill data. So let's see, actually, should we see what happens just before we move on? I'd like to see what happens. So as right now, let's see if this works. It won't display anything, but in the backend, it should have filled it, I think, because it got it, right? And let me just make sure that's being called through the admin HTML page. Admin. Right, okay, so this is calling click fill data, but that's coming, that fill data is a different fill data. That's coming from here, which is not yet defined. Okay, so we still have to do some stuff. Okay, so again, when the user clicks on this button, it's going to call this fill data. But this fill data is not the one that we just wrote in web service. This is coming from the app admin.component.ts. So we're going to define this inside the .ts of this component, which will then in turn call our other fill data, which is defined in the web service. So let's go into the admin component.ts file. So let's create a new function. We're going to use async await. And maybe just a word about async await. I know I mentioned it in passing, but why do we use async await at all? Like, what's the benefit of async await? Remember at all? About that? Okay, so before async await was invented pretty much last year. It was usable last year. Before that, we just had the regular callback functions, like if error, then else, then. We had those callback functions. So async and await is trying to solve callback hell. So you don't have to deal with delegation to the kitchen. Remember that analogy with the callback functions. Instead, you can use async await to write JavaScript code, which by nature is asynchronous, but async await makes it look synchronous. But under the hood, it's still asynchronous. So by using, bottom line, if you use async await, you're basically writing synchronous code like PHP, which makes sense in your brain better than asynchronous code, which uses a callback. Okay, so that's why we're using async await. Otherwise, if we didn't use this, we'd use either callbacks, regular callbacks that we know before, or promises. Okay. So async fill data. So this is going to be responsible for calling the fill data that we defined back in the web service, which is basically our get. So we're going to do this. We're going to say try. And we're going to, actually, before I do this, let me just show you one thing. If I say try right now in VS Code, it has a nice helpful utility. If you just click on this try catch right here, this second block, it'll actually fill in the structure for you. So it'll save you typing. And also in VS Code, you can define your own snippets like that. It's really neat. Okay, so we are going to say, we're going to fill this variable. So notice how I set a response variable up there. We're going to say that equals, and this is where we're going to call our fill data from the web service. We have to use the await. So with this dot web service dot fill data. So this fill data is what we just wrote back in the web service. So this is our get. Okay, so this function returns the JSON data. Ultimately, the JSON data that Node server, Express server spit out, which is all the games. all those games will appear in this variable now. So this dot response represents all the games in JSON format, all three. It's an array of objects. Okay. What do we want to do with those games now? How do we update the view? So the view, remember how I said in web.service.ts, I provided this variable called games, which is all the games. So if the view currently is displaying this variable, then let's just push our new added elements onto this array called games, which is defined in web service. And know how to add elements to an array. So here I'm accessing the array through .web service. So that's the array. To add any elements on the array, what's the method? Remember JavaScript, how to add elements in an array? Dot p u sh dot push, and then we can add our elements. Okay, so our elements again is defined here. This dot response. So we're going to add this here, but there's what I can't just say this. I can't just say this. What I discovered yesterday was when I console logged this dot response, it wasn't just the JSON data for some reason. It gave me a whole bunch of other stuff. And then I said, okay, well, just give me the JSON data. And I discovered, okay, I have to say .ops for whatever reason, which gave me the array of JSON data. Okay, that's fine. But you have to be careful when you're pushing elements into an array in JavaScript, because what this will end up looking like is you'll have an array like this of one object here, comma, another object here, comma, another object here. That's our current view. But then the fourth element that we just pushed is actually another array of three separate. You don't want that. You want all three flattened out in the same hierarchy, and that's why in JavaScript this was invented. ... Remembers what's that called in JavaScript? Anyone? That's called. And I'm blanking out. It's called. MDN ... What is it? What is it? What is it? Find spread. That's it. It's called the spread syntax. Yeah. See, spread syntax. It'll flatten out. So if you have an array called numbers, the ... will flatten it out. It'll flatten it out for you. Okay, so I did that. Great. And if there's an error, let's just say, I'm going to explain this later. I'm going to say this message equals unable to fill data. I know we don't have anything to deal with message right now, but I wanted this message to be like an alert, just like before where we had some kind of, danger alert warning in the top. I wanted this to happen as well. So that would be there for our future use. Okay, so I think that's it. I think that should work, right? Let's test it out. So we're an admin. I'm going to click on fill data, which should do the get, and the Node Express server should return it. And then we pushed all those here. Click. Oh wait, hold on. So that's where my my thing was. So that's already working for you. Okay, so let's see what's happening. What is that? Hold on. Okay, so let's maybe I'm in error. This .ops, I don't know what's in there. Let me just do this real quick. I'll say console.log this .response. Let's see what we get in there. I'm anticipating it'll be sample data that we pushed. Let's see. Let's clear my console for a second. Fill data. Unable to fill data. What's happening there? It's still giving me that. Is there any error on my node side? Nope. Okay. So what's happening here? Let's see. So it's going to my local host, fill data. Yes. And that's being called by my admin.components. Is it not? Is it not? Yes. And how come I'm not seeing this console? It's almost like this is not being called. Oh, can I see where that's being called? That is being called from here, HTML. Fill data, click, fill data. So it should run. So why isn't it running? Let's try this. Console log inside fill data. I just want to see that. I should see that if I click, at least. So fill data. Good. So at least it's going to the right function. Is it even doing this? Going to the catch statement. Right, you're right. So did I do something in my node? Oh, wait, hold on. My backend. Let me just double check my backend. Backend games controller. Did I do this right? Error. Const. Oh, hold on. No, I'm wrong. Game collection, insert finding, data, error, all games, yes. If error, yes. Register, success, false, fail to fill games. Else, spit out all the games. I don't think it's there. I think that's okay. So that means this, I see that it's about to print this dot response, at least. Is it going to go here? Here, because it's yeah, good point. So what is the error? Error. Fill data. That. Oh, usually, you know what? Usually when I see this unexpected token, that reminds me of a time where it was expecting JSON, but it didn't get JSON. It expected, like, it got HTML. That's why it has that angle bracket.
Try to parse login. That's why. HTTP failure during parsing for localhost login. What's trying to log in?
Sorry, say it again. Sorry.
See the message. HTTP failure during parsing for localhost/login.
Yes.
It's trying to log in, capital data.
Oh.
And that's why once JSON, the server is given a login page.
That's weird. Why would it do that?
Another Express app.
Oh, thank you.
Login
Right. Where's my index? Thank you. This one. That's the cause. So right now we just want to get back to the simple stuff. Thank you. Okay, let's try it now. Let's clear this out. Well, wonderful. Yay. Okay, so that works. The next easiest one, I figure, is the delete. So next slide, delete. So how is this going to work? So let's take a look at the HTML for this. If we go to our admin, this is our backend. Go to our admin.component. Let's look at our HTML code for the delete, which is right here. So notice, again, we're using the Angular way of handling click events here. And so if the user clicks on that, it will run this function, which is defined in the .ts of this component. So let's go ahead and make this function. Notice I'm passing the game ID, which is what's necessary because back in the node side, it needed the ID to know which game to delete in MLab. So let's go ahead and create that. But first, let's go back into Node and games controller. And let's look for our delete that we had before. There it is. So this was our delete that we had before, where it was redirecting to admin after successful removal of that game. So let's adjust this to spit out JSON. Again, what kind of JSON do you want? Let's make it simple. If there's an error, instead of console logging the error, let's say res.json, and we'll do the same kind of thing of the success. False message is game not deleted. And we'll do the same thing for the successful. So else res.json, yes, true. Right, so that means in Angular, back in Angular, I'm going to make a call to which route again? It's just, let me look at my index.js. It's going to be this one here. This. So this path /admin/delete :ID, I'm going to make a call to that back in Angular, back in my web.service.ts. I'm going to make a get call to that path. So just remember that path. So let's go into our, hold on. Oh, I think I missed one thing there. Let's go into our web.service.ts file. And I missed one thing there in my slides, I think. Oh, no. No, I am. So we're going to create a delete game here. Receive an ID. Okay, so the get request, because that's what Node wanted. So it's going to look, again, very similar to this, but the path is different, which is what I asked you to kind of remember. So let's just copy and paste this. So we have it's a get request. We know that. It's the same localhost 3000. We know that. Now, what shall we put here? It was, if you remember, it was admin/delete. And then back in Node, it said, :ID. But obviously, :ID is not going to work with us here. But this ID will work. So how do we include that here? Is the way, the modern JavaScript way of putting that in. So let's see if this works. I would anticipate that if I were to go to the admin HTML page now and just simply hover my mouse cursor over the delete, I should see the path at least to the correct path with the correct ID. So let's see if that at least happens. Hopefully. Okay, edit one. Hold on. Oh wait, what was my HTML? HTML. Oh, right. So it doesn't even have the href. But then again, it should have compiled it. Let's carry on. So back in our admin.component.ts, front end, admin.component.ts, we are now going to call that delete game function we just wrote in the web service TS file. So just like we wrote this function called async fill data, we will write a similar one for delete. Okay, so let's say async delete, which will have the ID as a parameter. And we are going to await. So we're going to call that delete game function we just wrote in the web service. So await this.webservice.delete game. I'm going to pass in the ID. Okay, so now, again, this line is going to return either the success, true or the success is false, right? Because that's what we wrote back in the node. That means this dot response should have either one of those success objects. What do you want to do? Let's test. If the success parameter was true, right? That's what we wrote back in the express. It's true. Or to make it simpler, because it's JavaScript, it'll just evaluate this as truthy if it has. So if it's true that it was successful, let's refresh. Let's get the games back again. Okay, so again, if you look at our here's our get games, right? So when this admin page loads for the first time, it gets all the games through these two lines. So if I just copy those two lines and paste it back down here where we're working, same thing. Else, if it was unsuccessful, we'll say this message equals unable to delete game. So let's test. So refresh. Or refresh. Okay, so I'm going to press delete for the first one. Let's see if it's actually gone. Delete. Notice I already put the inline JavaScript just like before. I say OK, and it's gone. Okay. Hopefully that was clear of what just happened. Same kind of idea as before with Express, except the only difference with Angular is we're just kind of splitting. Yeah, question. Yeah, the delete game in the web dot, sorry? Yep, delete game. So essentially, I copied this line here up here, and the only change I did was the path, because I remember the path. This back in Express, if we go to our backend, remember how in our routes.index.js, our original delete expected this path of /admin/delete with an ID. So that has to match with what we're doing now. So web service.ts /admin/delete ID. Yeah? Make sense? Cool. Just another observation on my part. All the Angular videos that I've been using to try to prepare for this class, they all use something up here. Import, they say import rxjs something something. And I found with Angular 6 it didn't work. So, but the thing is, in those videos, by doing that, they could do something like a .subscribe method, which I never really found any use for when I just used the .toPromise. So I don't know if I think my way is cleaner, because when you look at the other videos out there, it's just a lot of code that I think is unneeded. But then again, I'm just learning Angular myself. So power of async await. Okay. So that is that. What time is it now? Okay. Maybe let's do one more. Let's do the add. Did I give you an add form? Let's see what happens if I click on add. Did I give you an add form? Add game? No, I didn't. Okay, great. So go into Blackboard, week 12. I gave you the HTML markup for add component HTML. So if you go into weekly learning, go into week 12, I should have given you the add.component. So just copy and paste that markup and put it into the HTML of add.component.html. I'm going to replace this placeholder of add works and just paste in what I got from Blackboard. So now at least I should have a form showing instead of what I had before. Something is wrong. Now nothing's showing. Wait, if I undo and I save, does it show? If I delete all of that and paste my markup, save, does it show? Oh, blank. What's up with that? Huh. There's nothing here. And if I go to my console, oh, what is this? Flip. Right. Okay. So this error message right here can't bind ng model since it's an unknown property of input. Remember how I said Angular is very modular? So if you need a certain thing like ng model, you have to import that. So we forgot to import that inside of add component.ts. Now the question is, what was the import? I believe it was forms module, I think. Don't quote me. Totally off. And then whenever we do an import up here, we have to put that in the constructor. You know, before I go off in a tangent and think what the answer is, let me just check my answer file, which I did. Right. Node lesson 12 and source app add component.ts, which is right here. Where, what? Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Add component dot, is that my TS file? I can't tell. No, that's my CSS. Ah, there it is. Wait, that's the one I was just working on. What the? I was expecting to see something totally different. Wait a minute. Node, lesson 12, front end, source, app, add. There. So what did I include? Add to use my ng model. Oh, that must have been. Oh, you know what? I know where that is. Let me just double check if I'm right. Go back, go to my admin. Let's go up top. Huh, I was expecting to see a forms module there. Angular core. I know I need to import forms. Let me check my app modules. Ah, so if I were to open my other answer file of my module, this one. Oh, it's the same one. Sorry. Node, lesson 12, front end, source, and my module. Aha, that's what I was looking for. So all of this just to find that line. I need that line in my app.module.ts. So import forms module. So I was right. Okay. So in my one, I need that. And anytime you make an import on the up top, you have to put it somewhere in the bottom. So down below, the forms module goes into the imports array. So in my module.ts, I scroll down in the imports, I have to put in my forms as well, forms module. There, I think adding that should be okay. Let's try it again. So let me close up my stuff. Try it again. Admin, let's clear this console, add game. Okay, I got the form, that's right. No, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, I got the form, perfect. Okay, let us go back to our backend and change our node structure for the adding. So back in games controller.js, our add, there's our add. Actually, hold on, we don't want the add, we want the create game. Remember, this add game was just spitting out the form, which which Angular took care of us already for that. But we want what happens when they press the button to actually add the data. That's where the create game came in. So again, we have to change this to spit out JSON. So let's see, it's over here, it's creating a new game. Over here, it's saving the game in MLab. So here, we don't want it to redirect to a view, we want it to spit out JSON. So res.json what? What do you want to spit out? Let's spit out the game. We just said. That makes sense. And then if there's an error, we'll just say res.json, and we'll just do the success thing. Let's make sure that in our admin.component file, that the markup is correct. So when they click the add button, does it go correctly to where it should go? Let's see. Here's the add, yes, and it's already there. That's good. And then finally, or not finally, in the add.component.html file. Oh no, we already have that. We have the markup. Very good. And then finally, let's go into the web service, web.service.ts, and let's, just like similar how we define these methods, let's do the same thing. So we're going to say add game, and this will take care of our post request, right? So I'm going to copy this line here. Data, I'm going to paste it here, but there's going to be a couple of changes. What's the first change? Instead of get, it's going to be post. This is when the user is clicking this, submit button for the add form, and then the path is just simply add, right? Because that's back in our express. It's just going to add that. Now here, how is it going to know what to add if we don't pass it the game? So actually, what we need is we need a parameter here. It's called new game. So when we call this function, we're going to pass in the game that we want that the user entered in the form. And we're going to pass that in as the second parameter. So this is the new statement. So the changes are, we made it a post, we made it the path to /add, but here's the biggest change. There's a second parameter in this kind of thing. You can say comma and pass in the new game so that Express would know what to add. And finally, we're going to use this function called add game in our add component.ts. And let's see here. Oop, hold on. Add, I said add, didn't I? Add.component.ts. So the first thing is, in order to use that function we just wrote, we need to import the web service. So up top, you say import web service. From service. And then now we can use that. Now, anytime you import something here at top, you have to put it in the constructor here so that we can use it. So we have the private web service, which is a type web service. So this is the TypeScript coming in. This is what we're going to do. We're going to define an empty game for now. We're going to say game equals an empty object, and it'll have our field names, but just empty strings for now. Title, publisher, image URL. Again, I'm just going to define a responsive any. Use this async await. And so here, so when they click, submit. So let's take a look at the HTML for a second. So here's the button for submit, add game. What's the function? It's called post. So let's create that post now. So in here, a post. And this is where we're going to add or call the web service add game. So this.response will receive the JSON from the web service function that we just wrote. Now, I have to say a word about this. This.game, where is this coming from? Is this not the same thing as this? Yes and no. Keep in mind, back in our HTML page, notice how we used this ng model, which, as you remember from last time, this is a two-way binding. So whatever the user types in the input field will automatically be inserted here. So when we say this.game, this will be populated at that time. So now that we've added the game, let's push it in. Let's call our current array of games, and let's push in our newest game, which is now inside this response. And the final thing to do is, where do you want the user to go after they click on the submit button? You want to route them back to the admin page. How do you route in Angular? You have to import something called router. Router from Angular router. I can use something called router.navigate to actually redirect Angular way. And so now, because I imported that, I have to put that inside the constructor. So I'll just say private router, which is a type router. So this variable name is at my disposal now, because this variable name has a method called .navigate, which I'll use now. This.router.navigate. I'm going to go back to the admin page. So that hopefully will work. Let's see. All right, so let's just start. Just delete some stuff here. Okay, so if I click on add, I previously entered a stunts from before. That's why my form remembers. And yeah, so let's see if it adds this game. Add. Oh, it doesn't. Hold on. Admin games. Admin. Oh, nothing's here. Let's try it again. Actually, I do that. Let me see the console. Game. What happened there? Let's see what's. Okay, let's see if it's going to here. Let's see. So log post. After it does this, it should get it. So what's happening here? Oh. Try that. Game. That. Let's see what we got. Inside post. Oh, it did get it. So it got it. Got the new game from Express. Yes. So we just had to add it into our. I pushed it. So if I pushed it, that means if I say console log this web service dot games, it should have all the new games, right? Let's see. And add game runs 2. Hey, okay. So it has it. It's just not displaying it. Why? What's up with that? If I go out of that and then back. That doesn't make any sense. Great. Let me check my MLab. Good point. What is my password? Pro games. Oh, 3, you're right. So I only have 3 games. So it's a false alarm. So that means I must have added it before I actually received confirmation of that. So why was that? Async post. I got it. I thought I got it. Wait a minute. So that means in Node, back in Node, go back to my games controller. I create games right here. So if I say log adding game catch never added game. See what happens if I do that. Add game. Let's clear that out. Brother 2. Check out my console for Node. It didn't even call it. What was that? Index.js. Yes. Okay. Index.js. Did I make a mistake there or forgot to do? Right. Shoot. Where did that go? This one? Oh, this one? No, it can't be that one. Sorry. What was that, Tech? Go up. Line 21. What about line 21? I commented out. Yes, that's obviously what happened. Okay, so I need to, what kind of call was that? Get or post? I forget. Shoot. Web.service. I said it was a post. So that means in my games control, oh shoot, in my index here, I wanted this 21, which is what you said, right? Get rid of this auth controller. Games controller dot create games, and I think we already took care of that, right? Yeah. Thank you. That should work. Try it again. Admin, add games, events, distinctive, add game. Woo. All right. Woo. Time for a break. The only thing that's left to do in my slides is the edit. There, edit, which takes the longest. And then after the edit, there's the play, which I don't think I'll do in full. I'll just make mention of what things you should know. Actually, you know what? I'll do the play right now because it's really simple in terms of just letting you know what you need to know. So I saw this tweet this year, a few months ago, by Jake Archibald. I don't know if you know this guy. He works at Google. He's talking about the new way to get your URL search parameters. So if you just say new URL and put in whatever your URL is in your browser, you can actually say now url.searchparams.get and then foo. So notice foo is one of the parameters here. So this will output bar. Great. So that's what I used. I tried that out. I tried that new feature for the play, right? So that's what I used, and it worked. Instead of using the Angular way, I just used the JavaScript way for the browser, and it worked. And then also one thing you should know for the play is that because it's using an iframe, I got an error regarding security. And the way I got around that, let me just show you. Where's my play? Play.html and play.component.ts. wait a minute. Right. I need my other one. Node 12 front end source app play, and I want the HTML, and I want, right, so notice here, we were using an iframe, but I couldn't simply pass in a variable like that for the source attribute for iframe because it was a security risk. So I had to create something called a pipe and then pass in this safe thing. And what it looks like on the, that's not it. What that looks like is play TS. Is that the TS? Yes. There. So this is the pipe right here called safe, which I've used. I had to import a whole bunch of stuff right here to make that happen. I had to use something called DOM sanitizer in order for me to pass that URL and bypass the security trust resource URL. So that's the only thing you need to know for the play. So that's it. So take a break. After the break, we'll do the edit, and then there'll be free time for you to work on stuff, ask me questions. All right? So let's take 20 minutes. Yeah.
Just because I think I missed something.
Which one? App component.ts?
Yes. You imported the forms module.
Yes.
Then I think you did
I
something.
think, okay, app component.ts, this one here?
No, add.
Oh,
Add.
.ts.
So you imported a module, I think, up there, or you didn't? Yeah, you did. And then, did you have to mention?
I can leave it on the screen and then you could check on your computer screen. Tell me if you want me to scroll. Does your web service have the dot instead of the dot when you're importing it? Okay. Yes. All right. Couple of things. I just uploaded to GitHub my final working copy that I worked on yesterday called Final Front and Final Back, if you want to check that out. Also, I made a note in Blackboard under assignments for your presentation. I made the remark about the 70-30% split, but I also said this. A good way to end your presentation would probably be like a slide of links to other resources in case we want to follow up and learn more by ourselves. That would be nice, a nice way to end off your presentation, I thought. Okay. Let's go back to it. So you may have noticed right now, anyway, is if you click on any of these edit buttons and view your console log, click edit, it gives all of this red stuff. Basically, it's saying this, cannot match any roots. It doesn't know what to do with this, right? So the way I configured this link, if we were to look at it, inspect it, I said, oh, well, that's not a good way to look at it. Let's see here, front end, it was under admin, I believe, HTML. So where is that edit? It's down here, here. So here's something. Not only can you say the Angular way router link to replace your hrefs for your anchor tags, but you can actually pass in a second parameter here. So instead of saying something like this, the string plus name ID, which would work, which I tried, the better way is just pass in that. And because this is the Angular way of passing in your link, it's going to have the /edit/ID. But as you saw here, the problem is it doesn't know how to route this specific ID after the edit slash. Because back in our app.module, let me see, app.module.cs, where we defined all our routes, remember, ooh, it's getting slow here. I can't even scroll up. OK. Here, const routes equals. Remember this? So here is where we said, OK, if they go to /edit, then go to our edit component. But it doesn't know what to do with /edit/ some unique ID. How do we handle that? Well, it turns out, actually, before I say it turns out, any guesses? Turns out, at module.ts, that the way to handle that is very similar to the express way of handling it. So I just made a copy of that line. FYI, in VS Code, if you want to make a copy of the line, if you just say Shift Alt and then down arrow, it makes a copy of that line. So here, instead of edit, we'll just say edit/:ID. It's very similar to how Express handles it. So this will not break, hopefully. Let's try it again. If I click on this edit, does it crash? No. It now successfully goes to our HTML page for that component, which I also gave you in Blackboard. So if you go to week 12, you will see the markup for the edit component in there. So there's the add and there's the edit. So I'm going to copy the markup for the edit component.html, paste it, replace our placeholder HTML under the edit.component.html. So delete the edit works, paste in what I got from Blackboard, and so it should give me an edit form. Great, it gives me the edit form. Let's just check. Since most of my bugs in today's class has come from forgetting about index.js in the backend, let me just check the backend index.js to see if I have the same problem and preempt that problem right now. So do I have that problem? No. So I'm not calling auth controller in either of my edits. So That's fine. I think we're good for that one. So let's go into our games controller.js on the Express side, and let us look at the edit game, I believe. Edit. So keep in mind that this is going to be called by Angular in order to say, hey, the user wants to edit this ID. Can you fetch that data for me? Thank you. So here is the original function for that. Again, we don't want to render anything, so we delete that. Let's just say res.json. So if it errors out, we'll do the same kind of thing. We'll say success is false, message unable to find game to edit. And if it's okay, let's, and this is what I was talking about before in terms of designing your API. I'll have the same structure before, because before I would just say, like, bring in the actual game. Before I would just say game, but I think I'll try something different. I'm going to try success is true. This message is found game to edit, and we're going to pass in actual game object. Okay. Again, you have 6. If you have 2 of the same thing, you can get rid of both or get rid of one. That's fine. So this Express side will now spit out one JSON object of the game that we want to edit. So let's just make sure in our HTML, so in our admin.component.html, I just want to verify that our link is set up for edit. Yes, yeah, we just double check that. Good, okay. Let's set up the Angular way. Next is go to the web.service.ts where we define that get or post or all of that. Okay, so here we're going to say edit game function, and we're going to pass in the ID. And the purpose of this function is to do the fetching of data from Express. So I'm just going to copy this line over here, say Shift Alt down, then press Alt down arrow down arrow. There we go. So now let's say change the post back to get, because that's what the Express was. It was a get, I believe. Let me just, yeah, it has to be, right? Yeah. And then the path, okay, now I have to double check. Back end of index.js, what was our path for edit? This is what we're targeting right here. So the path is /admin/edit ID. So let's make sure we have that. So /admin/edit and then the ID. Now the ID is being passed to us, so let's just put that here. We don't need this one anymore. That is good. So now let's make use of that function, so so that the form will pre-populate. So inside edit.component.ts, edit.component.ts. Oh, I'm looking at my code that I have to type in. There's a lot of stuff here. So let's try this. First of all, we have to import the web service because that's where our function was defined. So import web service from this. And again, because we import something on top, we have to put that in the constructor. So private, we'll call it web service, which is of type service. Okay. So inside this class, let's do the same kind of thing we had before, where we had a game equaling an object that had a bunch of empty strings for the parameters. I'm going to also say response is of type any. The code that I'm going to write will come inside this ng on init. So when this edit form loads, it's going to run whatever's in this ng on init. So what do you want happen? You want to call that get function that we wrote in web service. So let's say this.response equals wait. Now, because I'm using a wait, I have to say async. So I'm going to say async in front of the ng on init. This.webservice.edit game. But we have to pass in an ID. Now, this is where it gets kind of convoluted. Let me do this. In the past, there was an easy way to get the ID with an express. It was like rec.params.id. In Angular, it's this.route.snapshot.params.id. I messed up. But I notice how it's not recognizing. There's a red underline because I have to import a couple of things. So up top, I'm going to import two things. We're going to import activated route. Activated route will allow us to use this route.snapshot.params.id. So it doesn't red underline anymore. And again, we'll also import router so we can then redirect the user to whatever path we want after. We're importing from at Angular/router. Okay, so this is the line I just typed. Here, import activated route. Now, again, because we have imported something up top, we have to put it in the constructor. So here, I'm going to say, after the web service, I'm going to say private route, activated route, and comma, private router is router. Save. Here, nicely formats it. These are the two new lines I just typed inside the constructor, along with the private web service. So now you'll notice the red underline no longer appears because this route is coming from this route, oops, which is a type activated route, which we just imported. Okay, so big picture, this function will return one single game in JSON format that we want to edit and put it in this variable called this.response. Question, how do we then transfer that into the form? Answer, if you open up edit.component.html just for a second, again, notice we're using the two-way binding of ng model for game, which means that it's attached currently to this object, which means if we just simply assign our this.response to this object, then all is well. All is well is good. This.game, which currently refers to this empty object, equals what we just got from our JSON, right? Oh, hold on, what am I getting here? Oh, thank you. Equal. Okay. Now, so what we have so far is, it should pre-populate the form, but nothing will happen yet if the user click submit. Maybe we should just test to see if it'll actually edit the form, like pre-populate. I'm curious. I haven't actually tested that yet. So admin, let's edit the first one. Let's see what happens. I anticipate it should take us to the edit form. I anticipate the values to be pre-populated. Click, done. Okay. Then we have to now work on what happens if the user clicks the submit button. So that is, let's go back to node land here, backend, just double check something for the, let's see here, index.js. What did we use? We said this one, router.post. So that's what we're targeting now. We're targeting this update game, which is found in games controller. So in gamescontroller.js, let's find our update games and let's change it to JSON. Right now it's this. So after it updates game, if it's errors out, we'll just do the same kind of thing. res.json, that's false, message unable game. And then if it's good, then we'll say res.json. What do we want to say? We want to say maybe success true, message updated. All right. So that means in our Angular, back in Angular land, let's go to our web.service.ts. Service.ts. And let's create a new function called update game, which will be similar to these other ones. Update game. And we're going to pass in the ID, and we're going to pass in a game parameter. ID will be used to tell MLab exactly which record we're updating. The game object will be used to give the new values. And I'm just going to copy this line here and bring it down. We have to make our changes. So this, instead of the get, it's now .post. That's what Node had in the index.js, I believe. And then the path was, the path was the same. But there's one thing. We have to pass in a second parameter called game. So this is so I simply copied this line up above, but changed two things. I changed the get to a post, and I inserted as a second parameter the actual game itself. So the values are that. And the final step is inside your edit.component.ts, we have to call that function. Just see the HTML for a second. So the HTML of edit component, yeah. So here's the button to save the changes, and notice how the click event is going to call this update function, which we are now going to write. So let's go into our edit.component.ts file, write that update function, which will call the web service update. Async update. The same kind of thing we did before. This response equals await, and we'll call our web service update game. Now this update game has two parameters. The first one was the ID, which again, we have to use this convoluted way of saying the ID. So I'll just copy that. There's our ID. The second is our object, which is going to be this.game. And so after that's done, it's now updated. We just want to redirect the router, or redirect the user using our router. So this.router.navigate. Our admin page again. And I believe that should work, and I believe that's it. So let's test it out for editing. Let's see if it works, because that's all I prepared for today. So edit, let's edit stunts. Repopulate it, I'll say stunts 2, save changes, stunts 2. Yay. So that's all I had prepared. Obviously I didn't get to the auth controller where, login, protecting certain pages like admin. So I'm going to leave you with the resource that I use to prepare for all the Angular stuff, which is the lynda.com. I actually have a bookmark here, and I'll show you the video series that I tried to follow. I say tried because, again, it's using what I think is a little bit obsolete stuff, so I have to try to make my own way, make it work. So this one here, was it this one? This one here called Building Angular with Node Apps. That's what I was kind of following, as well as this one, Angular 2 CRUD apps. And so they talk about the authentication and protecting certain links and all that. So that's all I had prepared. I think I wanted to give some time for at least a work period for those of you who want to ask me debugging questions or any kind of questions. You can use this time to work on your assignment, use this time to work on your presentation. or just ask me anything. So any other questions, comments before we go or before you work? All right, so I'll just turn off the web's YouTube stuff.